What is going on, everybody? Depraved Slasher here. We are back with another reaction. I'm Depraved.
I'm Hellcat.
And together we are
HellaDepraved.
Alright, so it's Monday. Actually, technically it's Sunday for us, but it's Monday. And we're doing recordings for non-music related things, except for one today.
Now, I am going to point out, I'm going to make it a community post. I'm sorry to all of our Indian subscribers that there was no music reactions this weekend. I had a large fight with Gravity and Furniture on Friday. I bent down to grab our kitten who was trying to escape and was not spatially aware of the furniture around me and drove my forehead straight into the corner of some of my furniture. And I tasted blood by the time I made it downstairs. So it was bad. Probably a slight concussion. It's dealt with, but between the headache and the blood and honestly the kids being freaked out and all that kind of stuff, we did not get around to reacting this weekend. I do apologize. I will try to be more conscientious of the furniture trying to kill me. I swear it moved.
Well, and we are going to try to... Usually we get our Indian reactions done throughout the week. Or at least as many of them as we can, so that by the time Friday hits, we only have to do like one or two at most. But unfortunately, it's coming upon the busy time of the year for me at work. And 10-hour days, it's really hard to come home and get reactions
and do extras. So we just hadn't, and then of course, you know, the 1 week we have a slight emergency.
Right.
Yeah.
I get this text. I got text from work. That's how great it went.
Yeah, I sent him a picture of the bloody towel, and so I did a thing. Because I'm great at letting him know that it's not dire. You know.
Alright, so with that being said, we are actually reacting to another Whatculture Horror. This is 10 horror movie nightmares within nightmares.
So awesome.
So I'm excited to see what exactly they're going to go with in all this.
And honestly, what that title truly means. Like there's several different ways that you could interpret that. So I'm interested to see.
Right.
It's not Mojo, so I'm cool with it.
Yeah. We're going to stick to doing Whatculture Horror things.
At least I understand their parameters.
Right.
That is key. All right.
All right, so with that being said, we're going to check this out. If you guys, hopefully you guys have seen it. If not, click the link in the description below. Hop on over, do all the things coming back. And we say that because we're a commentary reaction comedy channel.
Right.
Usually we say breakdown, but we're not breaking anything down. We're just kind of talking. This is 12 minutes long, so I would expect the reaction and conversation to probably be about 20.
Hopefully.
So
we'll see.
Be ready for it. With that being said, it's time to slash it up and check it out. This is Whatculture Horror with 10 horror movie nightmares within nightmares. Within nightmares. Let's get it.
They need italics.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nightmare sequences hold
Oh, what did you say?
Nightmare sequences hold pretty much limitless possibilities for any given horror film. Hell, entire franchises have been built around this very concept. With the trope being so prevalent though, some filmmakers do go one step beyond to trick the audience into believing what they're seeing. And this often includes our sleeper waking from a horrific nightmare and breathing a sigh of relief only to suddenly, boom, go straight into a second nightmare we didn't even know we were in.
One of the best moments of that happening, in my opinion, was what they just showed. I love Drag Me to Hell.
That was a really good one.
There's one I don't think you've seen yet either. It's called My Soul to Take. I think you would also like.
That one sounds really familiar.
It's about like 11 kids, 7 to 11 kids that are all born on the same day.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Have you seen it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
A while ago, but I've seen it.
Okay. It came out around the same time, and I always think of the two together.
Well, they sound like they should be sequels or something. I mean,
I'm Josh from Whatculture Horror, and these are 10 horror movie nightmares within nightmares. Number 10, Jen's Cave Nightmare Revenge. Revenge does pretty much exactly what it says on the tin. This is Mad Max meets I Spit on Your Grave, and it is not for the easily shocked. The film picks up when Jen is invited to her rich boyfriend's weekend hunting getaway in a remote luxury home overlooking a desert. When her fella Richard leaves on an errand, his friend Stan viciously sexually assaults Jen. Richard then returns to the scene, and instead of doing the right thing, he tries to persuade Jen to forget about the whole thing by bribing her. She, of course, flees, but Richard pursues her, pushing Jen from a cliff and impaling her on the limb of a dead tree. Amazingly, she somehow survives. She finds refuge in a cave, and using some peyote as an anesthetic, she cauterizes her wounds. She then wakes up and prepares to leave the cave when Richard suddenly appears and blows her head off with a shotgun, forcing her awake from a drug-induced nightmare. She leaves the cave again, and again Richard shows up with the shotgun, and bang, another nightmare. As she continues to dream, this time it's trippy. There are lizards, there are flashbacks, revenge fantasies, and once again, she wakes up in the cave. So yeah, that's 2 fake outs in a row.
It's like nightmares within nightmares within nightmares.
It's like Inception of nightmares.
Right, I've never seen that movie, and it actually sounds interesting.
Like, I definitely was like, oh, I love revenge movies in general.
I absolutely love the premise and most of all 3 of the I Spit on Your Graves, but it is always really hard to get through the initial snuggle struggle scenes.
Because first 45 minutes.
They're always long and extremely drawn out.
And graphic.
Yeah. And I'm just like, oh, come on, can we just get to the revenge part? Like, can we?
I watched the first one, I Spit on Your Grave, and honestly was just about to throw my TV. Keep in mind, these are like not flat screens and small. It was small. When it finally switched to revenge versus the first 45 minutes. Because at first I was like, what is this even? Like, is this snuff hidden within horror franchise? Like,
right.
And I knew at that point, because I don't know, this was 15, 20 years ago, but it was already a cult classic. So I was like, there's some reason that people love this. The ending half of the movie was fantastic. So I do like the premise. When I say I like revenge movies, for the most part, I mean like almost assassin type movies, like action movies, not necessarily. I like the horror ones too. So I have mixed emotions about I Spit on Your Grave.
Now, if I remember correctly, and don't get me wrong, the premises are still the same.
Mm-hmm.
Girl gets snuggle struggled, gets revenge, but I'm pretty sure if I remember correctly, both the second and third movie, it's not like 45 minutes of it.
Right. That's what I've heard. I have not seen those. I do want to see them. I have not seen them.
One day we will.
I've seen them. Just weren't like on the top of my priority list or anything. I do want to see them. It's unfortunate, but really, it's a very real problem that almost makes these movies, elevated to cult classics, because it's not all fantasy. You know, obviously her dying and reincarnating, but, and if not properly prepared, and I don't mean like the way that she's cooking it or whatever, but like mentally to take peyote. That's the iguanas, the multiple nightmares, like that's a high possibility, especially if you're dying. I also am struggling to, I mean, it's a movie, but I don't know how one would use it as a cure-all to being impaled on a burning bush.
I don't think it was burning when she was first impaled. I think that's how she got down. I think it caught fire and weakened, and it fell.
Okay, because I was just like, well, yeah, I mean, but still, she was impaled. Peyote wouldn't fix that.
No.
So don't do that at home.
No. All right,
Looks
next up,
interesting, though.
it's Hereditary.
Okay.
Annie and the Ants. I think I've seen this, but
I've definitely seen Hereditary.
I don't remember much about it. Maybe I didn't see it. Oh, no.
Number 9, Annie and the Ants, Hereditary. Hereditary proved to be one of the most inventive horrors when it released in 2018. Here we followed Annie as she grieves the death of her weird, secretive mother.
But the real question is, Annie, Are you okay?
Are you okay? Apparently she's not.
Apparently not.
No.
Released in 2018. Here we followed Annie as she grieves the death of her weird, secretive mother, and later her daughter Charlie, who is decapitated in a devastating car accident. Racked with grief.
One of these days, guys, I will actually pay for
Ad-free
YouTube.
Yeah.
Today is not that day. Tomorrow does not look good either.
Not until after we balance out after moving again.
Right.
Her daughter Charlie, who is decapitated in a devastating car accident.
That was rough.
Racked with grief because, of course she is, Annie begins to inwardly blame her son Peter, who was driving the vehicle with Charlie in the back. Consequently, she wakes up one night and watches a series of ants crawling over her bedroom walls and traces them to Peter's room, watching in horror as they spew from his sleeping mouth. It's spooky, but then Peter sits up, ants now gone, staring at his presumably sleepwalking mother. Now she seems fully awake, yet the scene becomes increasingly menacing as she explains to the terrified Peter that she tried to have him aborted. As the argument escalates, they suddenly become dripping wet, and in a moment, the liquid ignites and Annie wakes up for the second time. Number 8. NICOLAS.
Wow! That's fucked up.
She's not okay.
No, Annie.
Not even remotely.
Annie, you're not okay.
Yeah. So her secretive mom, like, I'm not sure what was hereditary here, but, you know, doesn't look good for anybody.
Psychoticness. Maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, it does not look okay for her son either.
Alright, next up, Nicolas Cage falls asleep. Oh, this movie is so terrible.
Right.
Laughably terrible, though. It's at least fun to watch.
The end is amazing.
Cage falls asleep on a bench, The Wicker Man 2006. Okay, yeah, alright, I know, if there was ever one film to kick in the bin on this list, it's the Wicker Man remake. Here, Nicolas Cage plays Edward, a traumatized cop who's asked by his ex to find her missing daughter. Consequently, he makes his way to Summersisle, a rural matriarchal community off the coast of New England, and before long, Edward finds himself at the center of a deepening conspiracy. The opening raises a lot of questions. Why do people who are planning to murder a cop behave so suspiciously? Is that really Aaron Eckhart in the diner at the beginning for like all of 2 seconds? And how do you unsee this film? They're all questions that you'll definitely be asking yourself at some point. Anyway, at one point, Cage manages to fall asleep on a bench by the harbour and dreams of seeing the child floating lifelessly in the water. He then removes his jacket and, performing one of the strangest 45-degree angle dives into the water ever put on film, he swims toward the floating corpse. All of a sudden, he wakes up from the nightmare still in the harbour and looks down to see the soaking body is now on his lap, and then he wakes up for a second time, as clear as day, a nightmare within a nightmare. The best part, however, is Cage shouting "God damn it" as he recovers. It's like unintentionally, utterly, completely hilarious.
That is like most of that movie.
Like he pointed out, it's hilarious, yeah. Like he's trying his best, but it just doesn't mesh.
They tried so hard to make that movie so serious.
Right.
But Nicolas Cage just does not fit for this movie that type of role very well.
He's not that type of serious.
No, he's like a campy serious.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
He's perfect for the National Treasures.
Right.
And things like that.
But things that aren't supposed to necessarily be humorous, but like he makes it. Yeah, exactly.
But he does not do dire well.
No. Especially, I do love that punch that he throws at the mom. It's like, I think that was the most shocking thing of the entire film for me. I was like, are you serious?
The bees.
I was like, that left hook straight into her jaw. What?
Right.
Why wouldn't you just leave? I don't know. I do love their costuming. That aisle looks awesome. They were probably drugging the honey. Just saying, you know.
Probably.
But, yeah.
Number 7, the demonic babe in the woods, Brightburn. Brightburn was supposed to be a nice change of tone from the average kid with powers movie, and while perhaps it wasn't terribly well executed, the horror approach is still welcome, albeit a bit familiar. When a spacecraft containing a baby crashes into Tori and Kyle's farmland, they decide to raise the weird kid as their own. Some years later, the little lad, now called Brandon, is an adolescent with more than acne and girls on his mind. He's an
like
alien
Superman.
with some nifty X-Men style powers, and he can throw lawnmowers really, really far. Sadly, he's also...
I wish I had that power as a kid.
it doesn't turn out well for him.
Fuck this grass.
Right? It reminded me very much of, like, what happens if Superman had gone wrong.
That's what a lot of people say. I've never seen it. I stayed away from it.
I accidentally saw it. Not my type of movie, you know?
Right.
Demonic Kids is fine. Like, The Omen's fine, but...
Also a bit of a psychopath, and before long, well, just think of young Clark Kent if he was the Antichrist. The nightmare within a nightmare in question, though, is different than the rest on this list, but it still counts. Here, the short, sharp shock comes first, as Kyle dreams of kissing Tori before she screams in reaction to something. As Kyle wakes up in bed, he steadies himself and glances to his left, but the wall has merged into a forest, as Kyle is still in a nightmare. This is where the slow burn comes in, usually reserved for the first part of the nightmare in these films. Here, he walks through the forest at night and finds Tori nursing a baby at the alien craft crash site. Peering closer though, he sees the baby begin to ooze blood, and finally looking at its face, the eyes begin to glow red. It is admittedly a nice sequence in an otherwise disappointing sci-fi horror movie. Number 6,
That pretty much summed it up. Yeah. I mean, it was definitely like young Clark Kent mixed with the Omen was the premise. And I don't like Superman, and the Omen was good. Not my favorite, though.
So, I like the Omen. I like the Omen remake just slightly more than the original Omen. A lot of that probably has some partiality that I have to Julia Stiles, period.
Right. No, I agree.
Because otherwise it's pretty much just the same.
It's the same, yeah.
But
again, like it's a good movie. Don't get me wrong. It's just not one of my favorites on the horror list, and I think part of it is because it is more of a slow burn kind of one, and I get bored, so it's not one that I can watch multiple times. I guess
there is one slow burn style of horror movie. At some point, I would love to actually have you sit down and watch. It's called The Disappointments Room.
Okay.
The very first time I ever watched it, I actually fell asleep about an hour in because I was like, this just is not picking up for me. I reforced myself to try and watch it again because I seen the outstanding reviews it was getting. And I finally made it all the way through, and at the end I was like,
holy crap.
Wow.
Yeah. There are some like that, but so my thing is when they're like that, because again, I like The Omen, and the premise was new at the time. It's just not one that I can rewatch all that often because it's I don't know. It doesn't move fast enough. There's not enough to it. You know?
There's also another movie I might try to find for us to watch tonight after we're done.
Mm-hmm.
It's called, like, Book of Blood.
Okay.
It's a weird one. It's not much of a slow burn like the other.
Right.
It just popped in my head.
Okay. All right.
I don't know. We'll see. All right. Slender Man, another movie I've never seen. Let's get it.
Teenage pregnancy, Slender Man. With the phenomenon of the Slender Man becoming such a viral sensation online, it wasn't before long that Hollywood sniffed out a potential moneymaker and got to work crafting a movie. Sadly, it was your regular, uninspired supernatural fare. Four pals hear of the legend of the Slender Man and decide to invoke the myth himself. So when Katie goes missing, other friends Ren, Hallie, and Chloe must find a way to stop him before they all end up as a statistic of the alleged Slender Man killer. In this nightmare sequence, Hallie wanders into the woods behind her house at night, hearing the voice of her missing friend Katie calling her name.
I mean, yeah. He pretty much summed it up.
Yep.
They could have made it cool.
She wanders into the woods behind her house at night, hearing the voice of her missing friend Katie calling her name from the darkness. When Slender Man finally appears though, reaching out with his breadstick fingers, she wakes suddenly back in her bedroom. Making her way to the bathroom mirror, thankfully all just a dream, she suddenly appears to be full-term pregnant and tendrils burst from her stomach, prompting the second screaming true awakening and the realization that she was still dreaming.
All right.
It wasn't great. It wasn't great.
So the reason I never watched Slender Man, First off, I absolutely 100% have no problems with campiness in any horror.
Right.
Regardless of how overused certain tropes are. It's one of the reasons I love horror so much. It's what makes the first Scream movie a good movie.
Right.
Because they play off the tropes that all horror movies seem to share. So I never like the excuse of, aside from its unoriginality.
Right. Right.
Horror movies, honestly, a lot of the best ones aren't original. They take what's already been done and try to do them better.
Right.
Sometimes they fail and they just become cult classic comedies.
Right.
And sometimes they do a really good job. Now, so that's never been a problem with me. The reason I did not watch it, I've never liked the idea of Slender Man as a scary figure. It was something that just never appealed to me. What does appeal to me are true crime stories based around two little girls that believed Slender Man was real.
Right.
And had some fucked up things happen. Like, that's something I definitely had no problem reading into. It's a rough read, especially when you have kids. But at the same time, it's like, this is some of the shit pop culture does to our kids.
Right. Right.
So it's definitely a good thing to read. But in terms of this, like, just as a character, like, I'm a huge video gamer. I love horror video games. Slender Man video game, which is where he really built off his initial popularity, it just wasn't good to me.
Right. I don't know.
And I just, it's just never been a story that I've ever really cared for.
Right.
It's like, oh, hey, look, tall, skinny dude in a white morph suit.
Honestly, it's like the Thin Man morphed.
Right.
And the Thin Man definitely has way more scary attributes in terms of, I don't know, what he's capable of and so on and so forth. But yeah. Agreed.
Number 5, A Nightmare on Sid Street, Scream 3.
Nice title.
Obviously, Wes Craven mastered the art of the cinematic nightmare in his legendary film, The Hills of Eyes. Just kidding. You know what I mean?
Don't get hurt. Don't get hurt.
Right.
My soul to take, obviously. Not one to just let one movie have all the fun, though. The legendary director also included a memorable dream sequence in Scream. 3 movies in, Sidney Prescott, the series protagonist, has retreated unsurprisingly to a life of seclusion. Unfortunately for her, though, all the locks in the world can prevent Ghostface from making a comeback. However, Sid receives a warning early on in the film in the form of a dream. Whilst asleep on the sofa, she dreams of her dead mother, Maureen. She wakes up with a jolt, and before she has the chance to recover, Maureen then appears at her window, issuing a warning, saying, "Everything you touch dies, you're just like me, Sid." Is this an actual ghost in the Scream series then? Well, afraid not. Sidney, of course, is still in a nightmare. Seconds later, as she creeps closer to the apparition, Maureen suddenly morphs into Ghostface, who lunges at her with a knife, waking Sid once and for all. Number 4, Buds.
Scream 3 was one I never really liked. The Scream series, like I said, I like the first movie. I have a personal hard time considering it horror.
Right.
But I do like it as a movie.
Scream,
the
Scream
second
was
and
great.
third and
yeah, it wasn't necessarily horror. Okay, so I would say the entire opening with Drew Barrymore, I would have classified as horror if it had continued along those lines. But because it became more of a meta commentary on the movie tropes, it became way more campy and therefore morphed into sort of a comedy movie. Like,
almost parody.
Yeah, I mean, if they had kept with the entire atmosphere of the intro, it would have been horror. But they didn't, and that's fine. Because, again, the first Scream is a great movie. I have seen all the ones but the last one, and...
There was a TV show, too.
Yeah, I haven't seen that. But, yeah, I would have stuck with the first and only.
How many of you guys are excited for the new trilogy they're working on? Let us know down below. It Comes at Night. I've never seen that before.
It's a bloodbath. It Comes at Night. A24 has a knack for releasing imaginative, cerebral horror movies, and It Comes at Night is no different. A post-apocalyptic thriller, in this story, the world has been infected with a fatal, highly contagious disease. Paul, his wife Sarah, and their son Travis live in a house in the woods with a strict security regime, and in the opening sequence, they're forced to euthanize Sarah's father, Bud. They even burn the body to ensure no one else becomes infected by his oozing sores. Young Travis's fears are reflected in his increasingly graphic nightmares, though. At one point, we find him wandering the woods at night, searching for his lost dog. As the barking gets louder, he wakes with a start, thankfully just a nightmare. However, he then sits upright and begins to vomit blood, his arms covered in welts from the disease. To make matters worse, his dead grandfather, his mouth dripping with blood, stares at him from the darkness until he suddenly wakes for the second time. The metaphor is obvious but powerful, but it's still a great film for those who appreciate a slow burn horror.
I mean, it reminds me of a mix of I Am Legend with almost bubonic plague type zombie movie. I mean, yeah. So
interesting. I have nothing to say. That was disgusting, seeing the whole blood come out.
Yeah, it's gross.
Into his mouth. And,
yeah.
Number 3, Freddy vs. Kristen and Nightmare.
Yes.
From my favorite Nightmare movie as well.
Yeah.
I'm so glad this is on here.
On Elm Street 3, The Dream Warriors. You didn't really think I was going to leave this list without mentioning A Nightmare on Elm Street, did ya? By 1987, the Nightmare franchise had been through some teething problems.
Although I'm going to be 100% honest, yes, this is my favorite Nightmare on Elm Street of all time. And yes, I fully understand people's complaints overall with the remake that they did. However, I will say some of the best Nightmare in Nightmare sequences I feel come from that movie.
Right.
But that's what he's got to say.
But it was still considered a lucrative bet for New Line Studios. So, after a movie off, Wes Craven was back for writing duties, now teamed with Shawshank's Frank Darabont. Likewise, the star of the original movie, Heather Langenkamp, was returning as the plucky Nancy. A bigger budget, a surprisingly effective structure, and a confident tone gave us the best Freddy sequel to date. As is often the case with these movies, though,
Fun fact, that was originally designed to look like a penis. It was done.
Which part?
On the snake.
Oh, okay.
That tries to eat Kristen. Yeah, he was specifically made to look like a penis. Everybody's like, he looks like a penis. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
That was
the goal.
That was the goal.
Okay.
It was definitely a sexual repression
kind of thing.
Right. And also another fun fact: they are known as the company that Freddy built, or it's called the house that Freddy built, is what New Line Cinema is. Because they were actually getting ready to go out of business when they did the first Nightmare.
All right. Cool.
And then ended up racking up a crap ton of money. And obviously it spawned like 9-10 sequels and fucking shows and shit.
Gave us the best Freddy sequel to date. As is often the case with these movies, though, we pick up with a new set of characters, this time led by Kristen, who's being hunted by Freddy Krueger in her dreams. Kristen, plagued by nightmares, finds herself in Nancy's dilapidated Elm Street house in the film's opening dream sequence. Here, she attempts to rescue a little girl from Freddy's razors and wakes up in a cold sweat, making her...
Why of all moments do you have to do this now?
I know.
This is also my number one comfort movie.
Oh yeah, he falls asleep instantly.
Mm-hmm. Attempts to rescue a little girl from Freddy's razors and wakes up in a cold sweat. Making her way to the bathroom to wash off the experience, though, Kristen reaches for the tap, which suddenly sprouts blades and slashes both of her wrists. Number 2.
So, I really don't like that movie.
We have seen it. Yeah.
So, the reason I fall asleep so quickly, I have seen that movie so many times. I have it shot for shot in my mind memorized.
Right.
And it's easy for me to lay down and still
just
see what's going on and follow along with the sound. And I'm usually out before she's even done playing the Into the Fire in the beginning.
Which you sing along to every single time, and then for the next couple of days afterwards.
Yes.
Which,
Docking.
It is what it is. It is what it is.
I'm actually super glad they did use that example from a Nightmare movie, though. It is, again, my favorite movie all time.
It's a good nightmare within a nightmare. That's a good example. This movie, I fell asleep at the end.
She fell asleep too when we were trying to watch it together.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen it before, like, eons ago.
Oh, no, we were trying to watch Paris.
No. We watched this
Was it London?
Yeah.
No.
American Werewolf in Paris, I'll actually stay awake to. And honestly, it's because it's way more campy and therefore actually
So
I like American Werewolf in Paris. Like, I know that that's not like, the most popular opinion, but out of the two.
My problem with American Werewolf in London, and where they started to lose me, is like, so he gets attacked by this werewolf. They, while he's knocked out, take him to a hospital. Mm-hmm. And you're telling me in the couple of days he's there, he builds this relationship with this nurse close enough that she's just like, yeah, come stay with me for a little while. Me.
Right.
I don't sleep with all the patients that come to... Come on.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, you can't... Yeah. No, I like the storyline of Paris better. And again, like I said, they didn't take themselves quite as seriously. So, it worked.
Now, this movie did spawn what is still probably, at least in my top 5 favorite
Ice Nine Kill songs. Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Which suddenly sprouts blades and slashes both of her wrists. Number 2, Nazi Mutants, an American Werewolf in London. In a story that absolutely terrorized my young British mind as a child, American Werewolf opens with David and Jack, two backpacking Americans, being attacked by a werewolf in the Yorkshire Moors. Jack is killed and David wakes up in hospital in London, having been bitten, as his transformation set.
Do you think these are sort of a commentary on American travelers in other cultures as well?
Probably.
Yeah. I mean, like, he was saying traumatized his young British mind, and I was like, they are awfully specific that they're Americans in both. Mm-hmm. And then Dreams of Hostel.
Well, I think it's very much... So Americans are raised very, very much so into if it takes seeing something to believe in something.
Yeah. And
we don't take, as a country, I'm not saying us specifically, but as a country, we typically don't take other people's cultures and mysticism seriously.
It's because we're so young. Like, they've been built on centuries of lore and legend. And right. Yeah.
So we go over there, and honestly, we come off as very disrespectful when we do it.
Yeah, well, we come off as very disrespectful, period.
Right. And I think that's why movies like these are great, because it's like, don't get me wrong, obviously we don't believe in werewolves.
No, but I do believe that there was something plaguing villagers that caused them to... And would I tell them point blank, like, you're stupid? Absolutely not. And no. In fact, I'm fascinated with myths and...
I would be like, show me.
I would be like, please, tell me more.
Not in a, like, I need to see it to believe it, but like, no. I want to see...
No, I'd be like, please, like, can we share food? Can you tell me all of, like, this specific region's stories? Like, it's fascinating to me. But honestly, a lot of Americans... when we... took over this country and knocked out all of the myths and religions and lore that already existed here. We were crossing at a time that, like, while there was mega Protestant beliefs, and then of course there was also Spanish foundation in this country, so on and so forth, really scientific enlightenment had already taken place. So other than what we picked up here and there from the indigenous people that we then silenced, we really didn't bring a whole lot of myths and lore about this continent into being. There was some from the old countries, and a lot of it turned into superstition, not like more myths and lore about our local areas, but so we're very young in those kind of beliefs. Also, because we have so many diverse beliefs here, and yet we're all taught to, state our opinions loudly. Whereas if you go to other countries, a lot of times they have the same beliefs. It's not quite as diverse. It's not a melting pot. And so we do come across as quite disrespectful. But yeah, I was just thinking about that when they were like American backpackers, and I was like, shoot, that's American, and that sounds like hostile to me.
Right.
So,
and David wakes up in hospital in London, having been bitten. As his transformation sets in, David begins to experience visions, and this is where things begin to get wonderfully weird. One night, whilst in hospital, David dreams that he's back home, surrounded by his family, and...
What?
Okay, that was not one of the faces we were confused on.
No.
We have a couple faces on this thing over here that we're confused on, and I thought that looked a little more familiar.
Oh, okay.
I was like, being in the bed.
Do we have a bug over here? Like, what's going on?
No. That face.
Yeah, no. I was going to say, why so serious?
One night, whilst in hospital, David dreams that he's back home, surrounded by his family, and enjoying an episode of The Muppet Show. When the doorbell rings, though, it's sadly not the postman, as a cohort of Nazi mutants armed with automatic weapons barge in. His family is slaughtered and David has his throat cut, waking from the nightmare at this pivotal moment to the sedate surroundings of his hospital bed and the nice charms of Nurse Alex Price, who he absolutely fancies the pants off. Alex says that she has just the thing to help and heads to the window to let the morning light in. When she rips the curtains open, though, she's then stabbed in the chest by another Nazi monster who's hiding behind them. It is an absolutely superlative jump scare, thoroughly unexpected, audibly assaulting, and appropriately violent. Number 1.
Okay, I didn't jump at that, though.
I didn't either.
And part of the problem is, yeah, it is a nightmare, it is dreamscape, so things get messed up, but mutant Nazis aren't terrifying to me. Nazis, sure. Mutant ones, though. Bless you.
Thank you.
Not so much.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, last one's going to be Prince of Darkness. It ends on a movie I've never seen.
Yeah.
So let's see what they got.
Catherine's Return, Prince of Darkness. An underrated John Carpenter gem, Prince of Darkness follows a priest who calls upon the big brains of Professor Howard Birrick to investigate the findings of a secret.
It's got people I fucking love in it.
Maybe I have seen this. It would have been a while ago.
I need to
watch
watch
this. When did this come out? 80s?
79.
Okay.
Who calls upon the big brains of Professor...
Because I'm pretty sure that's Pat Morita.
I'm pretty sure you're right.
Hold on. I gotta make sure I'm right before we continue this, guys. I apologize, or it's gonna drive me fucking batshit. What is this called?
Prince of Darkness.
Prince of Darkness.
John movie, 1987.
Is it 87?
It looks like. I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was off by 10 years.
That's okay. I knew it was 80s.
No, that's Victor Wong.
Victor Wong.
Somebody's gonna be like, is that an Asian people all look the same thing? No!
No.
He just looks very much like Mr. Miyagi.
I think it's possibly the haircut and the facial hair structure.
But that is definitely Donald Pleasance, who
Right.
I absolutely love. Lisa Blunt's in it. Alice Cooper's in it. Let's go, Dirk Walker, dude.
We're gonna have to look this one up. Well, I mean, okay, let's watch this little thing and then we can decide if we want to see it or not.
Rated John Carpenter gem, Prince of Darkness follows a priest who calls upon the big brains of Professor Howard Birrick to investigate the findings of a secret society called the Brotherhood of Sleep. In the crypt of a church in LA, the Brotherhood guard a large vial containing a swirling green substance which is essentially just liquid Satan. The nightmare within a nightmare comes right at the climax, as character Brian grieves for his lover Catherine, who essentially sacrifices herself to save humanity. He sees her emerge from the church in the recurring nightmare, which is a warning from the Brotherhood of the incoming apocalypse, and like all intense movie nightmares, results in him waking in sheer panic. However, he then turns over to see that Catherine is actually lying in bed with him, albeit minus half of her face. Is she trying to communicate from beyond the grave? Who knows, but it's a great jump scare. So that's our list. I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. What do you think of these nightmares within nightmares, and are there any cool ones I missed off here? While you're down there as well, can you please give us a like, share, subscribe, and head over to whatculture.com for more lists and news like this every...
That was fun.
All right.
I don't know if I want to see that movie now.
Yeah, me neither. There were several... I love that kind of premise. I love that. Like, I love the secret society kind of cult of darkness premises, and yet almost all of them let me down. They're honestly pretty...
But I don't know either, because, like, it's John Carpenter.
Who does great
John Carpenter does fantastic movies. He has my favorite vampire movie of all time, which is just called Vampires.
John Carpenter.
He has one of my favorite short movies of all time in Cigarette Burn, starring Norman Reedus.
Fantastic one.
Which, by the way, I would still love for somebody to make a movie called Le Portrait de... what does he call it? The film... Anyways, it's like it translates to like the film of death, or I think it's Le Film de Absolu de Mort is what it's called.
Okay.
I would love for somebody just to make that as a movie.
Right. No, I mean, like, he makes great stuff, so and it has some great actors in it.
Right.
Again, most of the movies with that premise end up letting me down. And it's just like, I think...
Halloween, of course. Sorry.
I think that we have a problem making people as evil as the premise suggests they should be. Like, and actually releasing it. Because I'm sure that there are some filmmakers out there that write a really terrifyingly evil script. And then they're told, oh no.
Yeah.
This can't be released the way it is.
That's
you're
too
gonna have
much.
you're gonna have to cut back here, here, and here. But the problem is that if you watch some of these documentaries, even on like some of the family like cults, and I'm not talking like Manson family, although that works. Some of the things that take place is actually terrifying. I'm not talking about like necessarily Satan worshiping or anything like that, just what actually takes place, the brainwashing, the emotional abuse, the abuse of children, it is awful. And yet, because it's going to be a movie, because it needs a rating, because of all this, like, even in the horror genre, we are careful to fit in certain parameters. And oftentimes you can tell when you watch the movie and you're like, oh, well, the idea was great, the actors are great, and then you did that, you know.
Right.
So we'd have to see.
But yeah, it was a fun little list.
Yeah.
I kind of wish we'd probably went with something else. They had one that was like 8 secrets in horror movies that'll catch you off guard.
We still have more time.
But no, I mean, it wasn't bad. It's just I haven't seen a lot of those movies.
Right. Honestly, the nice thing about...
Although the Nightmare one was,
right.
A1 in my book.
The nice thing about seeing these ones that you haven't seen the movies for is it does give you a little sneak peek into which ones you might want to see.
Right, like that first one, Revenge.
It's just called Revenge. Yeah,
like,
I want to see that.
Of all the movies on the list that I haven't seen, that's the
only one that I'm like, I want to see that.
Oh, yeah, I want to see what...
Again, the Prince of Darkness is one that I check out, like check into. Maybe if it has a trailer or something, watch that, but like... Right. I'm not sold on it. The other ones I've seen way more than you have, and honestly, I wish I hadn't.
Right.
So, I don't feel like you were missing out on a whole bunch.
Right. But yeah, so with that being said, we've got the next video that comes out will be at 12, because this is our 10 o'clock video. 12 o'clock, you're going to get a breakdown of the verse that I did for Is Apocalypse. And then at 2 o'clock, you're going to get another Whatculture reaction, which is going to be based off of... it's still a Whatculture Horror, but it's based off of video games.
Cool.
All right. So stay tuned for all that. Also, please remember, there are Marvel podcasts that we are doing. We are very slowly, not so much, but still kind of toying around with the idea of a horror channel. It's eventually going to happen.
Yeah.
It's just there's a lot that has to go into it.
Right.
And it's just coming up a time we're getting ready to move again, so... There's that.
Busy month for you. We just got the kitten. And obviously, I'm gravitationally
challenged,
yeah.
Yep. So, hope to see you guys later. With that being said, we love you guys. Thank you all for watching. Cannot wait to see you Depraved people later. Peace. I didn't do the normal outro, and I just realized it.
It's okay.
Oh, well. Bye, guys.